If you do something just to make money, your judgment will be clouded. But if you're allowing yourself to hear the winds of change, and to feel it, then money will be the end result. So, welcome everybody to our Power and Gas podcast from Zug, Switzerland, here in our little studio at the West Hive. And I'd like to welcome our first guest from the outside world, Dan Cordell from Human Capital Group. Very much appreciate having you here today.
Thank you very much for having me. This is my first foray into vlogging or podcasting, so yeah, treat me well if you can.
Well, look, it's perfect because mine as well, apart from the two I've had with Greg, where he was kind enough to lead, and now it's up to me and you. So here we are.
I'm excited.
I would say the main topic here is Dan is to blame, right?
I've heard that a few times.
In a good way, in a good way, because it was actually Dan that came up with the idea, so to say, of bringing us to the Onyx group, to Greg and Omar's team. And I think one of the goals of this podcast and kind of our little delve into the media world is to a little bit demystify, give people a look a little bit in the background, and also give some people who might not be, outright considering a career in our world, maybe that this is not such a bad idea, and places such as the HC Group. Certainly one of the world's largest headhunters in the energy and commodity space, has a lot of, I hope, and our guests hope, good anecdotes, and give us some great insights into your daily doing, I would say.
I've got a few, some that can probably be shared on camera, some maybe off camera, but so let's keep it clean. But yeah,
excellent. So I think again, maybe give us an overview of yourself, maybe, and your long illustrious career. And then maybe work your way towards the blame game.
Yeah, okay. So look, yeah, thanks for the introduction and about calling us one of the world's largest energy and commodity headhunters. And I think that we've been going since 2003 now, and we entered the space just as some of the big US merchants were pulling out of the European markets, the Enrons, the Dynergies, the Dukes of the world, and we tried to navigate a little gap in the market for a lot of those incumbents that were looking for work. And I think at the time the two founders didn't really know which avenue to go down, and we got given a gas trading role, I think from Sempra back in the day, and that kind of pointed the direction for us, saying, right, we're now a commodity and energy search firm. So 2003 we started, based in London, solely recruiting around gas and power. We're now 72 people globally.
Wow.
With offices still HQ'd in London, but offices in Houston, Sao Paulo, New York, Singapore, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Geneva. And we still cover gas and power, one of the reasons why I'm on here today to talk to you, but we've also expanded across a real multitude of other products. So the way that the business is split is actually by mirroring our clients, whether it be trading houses, majors, utilities. So we've got a global portfolio that covers gas and power. We've got a global portfolio that covers LNG, oil, metals, minerals, bulks, ag, softs. So all the product lines that our clients trade. And then that's underpinned by a commodity tech practice and a corporate functions practice. So we'd like to say we're all men and women to our client base. So that's the business. I joined in 2007, and I was one of those classic first entrance into recruitment where I left university and said, I just don't want to be an estate agent, I don't want to be a recruiter. I did a European politics degree, and given what's going on now in the world would have probably become in quite useful. And a rec called me up and said, look, why don't you try headhunting? It's not like recruitment. So I met a couple of firms, met HC, or we were called Human Capital at the time, and it was a year before the kind of MBS mortgage crisis kicked in. So the world was still sailing in quite a nice direction. So I joined, and I remember on my first day, one of my colleagues who is now a competitor firm, and I'll give him a nod because he was great to me, Tom Lindsay, who's now at Ardmore. Tom gave me an article on how Lufthansa hedged their oil exposure.
Famously so.
Yeah. And I was sat there reading to myself, what does this mean? I have no understanding about the oil markets, no understanding about trading. And the more and more that I read about it and understood it, I kind of got hooked into the energy space. And fast forward to 2025, I'm still here. And in those years, we've seen highs, we've seen mega lows, we've seen changes, we've seen companies coming and going. We've seen businesses imploding, we've seen individuals coming and going. But I'm still here because look, I think it's a great arena to be part of. I know we're going to come on to this later. I had a 2-year hiatus when I had a young family in 2016, came back after 2 years just because I missed the people I worked with and I missed the business. And along those, 10, 15 odd years, I've met some characters, present company included. But in all fairness, I've had the fortune of being in the room with some phenomenal people, right? When you look back and you hear of some of the stalwarts of the industry, I've had the fortune of being in the room multiple times with Cordell at Traf, and I've met the owners of Gunvor and some of the senior guys at Glencore and Traf and Mercuria. So those that have kind of built the energy trading world to what we see today. And on the flip side, I've been fortunate enough to be in the room with the CEOs and heads of some of your previous employers, the likes of Vattenfall and the Centricas of the world and the EDFTs, and then into the oil majors. So it's given us a real kind of window into the market. And we often, to any new individuals joining HC, we always say, look, we're not traders, we're not originators, we're not marketers, we're not quants. So don't try and get into that level of conversation with a trader, with a marketer, with a quant, with an originator, because we'll be kind of below par. But what we can do is we can sit there on a level human to human and have that conversation about what's going on the market, what's affecting you, how is the Trump trade affecting your year this year, right? So that for me has been phenomenal. And yeah, I've actually had the fortune to meet some incredible people and see some incredible things, and also have some really, really, really poor experiences as well. But I think
comes with the territory.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's all part of the growth and the learning of being in the space. So yeah, look, I've loved it. How long have I got left? Who knows? I've got 3 kids now that are kind of saying, Daddy, you're losing more hair and you're getting more grey around the beard and putting on more weight. But
it's wisdom.
Yeah,
it's wisdom and gravity.
That's what I say, right?
You know, the same goes for me. I might have a lead on you here, yeah. But you definitely have a lead on me on the other side. But yeah, I think what's really interesting, I mean, in this whole space, as you say, it's such a big space and such a vital space for global economy but also for global society, because I mean at the end of the day it's about price finding efficiently in a market space, how to best allocate everything that we have, right? Whether it's from minerals, whether it's from oil to gas, whether it's later on electrons. So it's not easy, because at the end of the day it's still humans doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And you have and you mentioned some of the great shops, and I mean certainly Zug was built on a little bit on this you know, mystic sense of, you know, before it was Mark Rich and Company, and I believe everybody knows this, and then nowadays obviously Glencore, one of the world's largest commodity traders. And I think when you walk down the Metalli Main Street in Zug, yeah, you can really see so many people from our industry that are just kind of going about their normal day, yet you have to carry on your shoulders quite some large decisions and things which you need to stand up for, but also which you need to kind of take the blame when blame is necessary, right? I think
absolutely.
I think one of the main things probably, and it goes for your industry as well, right? If it works well, victory has many parents, and it's a team effort, and But many times, and especially in our industry, you know, loss is a lonely one. Yeah, and
we see that a lot, right? And probably more, given we're the buffer. When things go wrong, the client won't blame themselves and they won't blame the person that's joining them, that's our job. That's our job to get the blame right. And
to a sense, I never knew that.
look, it's tough, right?
Because I haven't blamed you so far.
No, hopefully you won't. No, but I think the headhunting market or the headhunting role has evolved massively over the past, since I joined in 2007, right? When I joined, it was you could operate off a little black book and you keep those relationships going and you go kind of client A, client B, client C. And don't get me wrong, I still think there's a lot of relationships involved in this space. But the role of a search firm now has almost become the lawyer, the accountant, the tax authority, the visa application company, because that's now expected of us to be able to supply all their services, because the client's saying, I don't have time, that's not my job. And you're saying to me, well, does this look right to you? So we now have to pull everything together. So yeah, it's a different type of pressure
and
on
it's
our
the growth
shoulders.
pressure as well, right? When clients
yeah.
are especially growing, I imagine one of the first things that will come your way is, oh my God, we've grown so much now, we need more structure. Can you help us?
Yeah.
Right, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, and I'd like to think we've done quite a good job recently of delineating from our search business a slight shameless plug here. We've now rebranded our advisory arm as Talent Intelligence, which there is a genuine Chinese wall between our search business and our talent intelligence business, because we are now seeing getting so many requests around comp design, organizational design, business structure, business setup.
Best practices.
100%. So we're no longer just getting called for we need a Conti power trader or we need an ARA gasoline blender. It's come in some instances, and we've done this for a number of companies in Switzerland, to help us set up our entity. What does our comp design need to look like? What are our reporting lines? So we've now hived that into our talent intelligence piece, which is drawing from real life examples of best practice and also worst practice, and say, how do you actually create a sustainable entity, not just for 2 years ahead, but over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? It's so we've seen that role change dramatically, and look, for us, that's great, because we now get I don't want to say a seat at the top table, but we get to look behind the curtain, and we're relied on that much more. And I know everyone craves genuine partnership, but this really does breed partnership and relationships, and that's, I think, where our levels now got to. And don't get me wrong, we still love doing the Conti power trading roles, but like what we did with you guys here, right? It was a team of 4 at the time that we put in, and Greg, I don't think, had any plans to set up in Zug until we kind of floated your names to them. And fast forward, a year and a half now. Beautiful office here, podcast studio, and a team next door. So
yes.
Yeah, that for us is kind of where we're bridging the gap now to some of the bigger Corn Ferries, Russell Reynolds, Spencer Stewart's. Not that we kind of want to go down that corporate route, but we're seeing a lot more of that now. Just going back slightly and touching on your point, it's been playing in my mind when you said about the pressures of people walking up and down the street here. I don't know about you, but when I speak to my friends about the type of work that we do, it's very hard to contextualize or rationalize to my friends that there are companies out there that they've never heard of, that if they were to float tomorrow would be top 5, top 10 FTSE 100 businesses. And being able to sit in a room with the CEOs and the COOs and decision makers who are running $16 billion of equity on their balance sheet on a company that but very few people have ever heard of, yeah. It really compounds what we do, or what you do, but what we see. And that's the exciting part for us.
And that's the exciting part, but and I would say almost as for new entrants, because I mean, obviously Onyx in the UK, very successful, hugely successful in their neck of the woods, in the oil market and the futures trading, in the market making. But I think and this speaking from, I mean, I've had 2 experiences with human capital, and we can speak about the first one later. But the second experience was really, as you say, bridging kind of also the understanding of, for the other side, what you guys are getting involved with, right? And what you guys are actually looking to do. Do you really get it? Like what this will take, the kind of long breath you need to have if you want to make this successful. And 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 I don't mean this in a facetious way, but when people read about returns in our industry and oh my God, I need to join, and human capital, here's 20 million, make it happen, and these guys better perform in the first quarter. Yeah. So basically you have something from that, which is almost very touristy, to you have places such as Greg and Omar, and obviously history will show the effect it will have, but where actually a lot of thought went into, okay, this is not just because I read about it in the Financial Times. I'm doing this, speaking for Greg and Omar, because we believe we can bring our value, what has helped us to grow, and mix it with kind of old school, new school, now school, and build something that's actually more than just, let's say, a few Excel sheets and a few P&L sheets. And obviously people will come and say, oh my God, it's not like you guys are curing cancer or anything. No, we're certainly not. Although later on some of the capital we earn might go into great causes. We actually are pretty vital in price finding and information that breeds to hopefully good decisions, not just for ourselves, right? Because at the end of the day, we're part of society, and when the markets are sending you really worrying signals, you can't just leave it up to, I don't know, the old traditional way of getting the information out to people, because it won't get there, But on the other side, you also don't want to be in a place that just kind of is stuck onto doing just one thing, and then you kind of forget about that actually the markets you operate are also affected by many other things. You mentioned the Trump trade. There's certainly a lot of, whether it will be the China trade next, whether it will be the China-Russia trade, whether it's the trilateral trade, America, China, Russia. There's so many things coming at us, and kind of coming back to, people who are a little bit maybe not as informed will say, oh, headhunters, once they place you, they don't care, and then, on to the next, and Mirko, you're going to give us a call if we need to find, I don't know, an Italian trader or something like that. So I think what sets you guys apart, because I started in 2005, so basically 20 years coming up soon, is that, a place like yours can help you from your birth, so to say, to middle age, to older age. Because why? As you said, you've been in the room with so many of the greats, and people are going to say, "Oh, what do you mean greats?" and da. But to hold on to your convictions and to your views and build a business on this, as a lot of the greats have done, it really doesn't happen overnight.
No, absolutely.
And there's so much, I would say, knowledge and wisdom to be gained there from having seen some of the good, bad, and ugly. That I would almost say, because you mentioned back then called Human Capital Group, HC Group now, started right after the Enron kind of disaster and whatnot. But for instance, and this was a few weeks ago on Bloomberg, Ken Griffin actually giving an anecdote about that time, saying basically, oh man, I called my guys, I said, go immediately, fly to Houston, interview everybody, right? Everybody you can get your hands on, do it. And this basically, tune out or tune in to now 20 years later, Citadel makes a huge amount of its money from actually the energy space. Yeah. Right? And being able to correctly assess weather situation, fundamental situation, stack data. And so this kind of ever evolving, one person's misery will be the opportunity for someone else.
Look, I've got a slight ambivalence towards the funds at the moment. And I think maybe, I don't know if it's the route we want to go down here from one of your previous employers, maybe you will as well, right? But if you look at 22 and 23 in isolation, what you mentioned 5 minutes ago is people look at the returns and say, I have to be in that space, and almost ignore any consequences around it. And post 23, we saw an absolute rush of funds coming into the space. And when you say the role of a gas and power trader is price discovery, is movement of whether it be molecules, atoms around Europe, around the world, The funds don't do that, right? The funds are there to return money to their LPs. And when I think it was, what was it, November last year, October last year, where 40% of all open TTF positions were held by the hedge funds. I can't, and as I said before, I'm not a trader, but in my mind, that shouldn't happen. It's
350 terawatt hours, basically Germany's consumption. It's
right, and it's too, for me, it's too short-sighted and it's too dangerous. And yeah,
well, Q1 proved that.
well, precisely right.
But
that's where you can have, and without mentioning any names, but if you look 2-3 weeks ago, you had some companies drawing down 2 billion, 1 billion, 800 million, 600 million, and not many people really batted an eyelid to that. And if you look pre-22, imagine hearing those numbers then. People be running for the
Inflation.
hills. Which, and it's a scary part, right? But when you say investing in people and investing in the future, I sometimes wonder if people aspire to be that big hedge fund trader, or if they aspire to do, I know it's a question of ethics, right? But whether they aspire to do the right thing. And sometimes there's a blurred line between some that go to the funds outside of some of the established funds. I think it's tricky at the moment. And we're not a hedge fund recruiter. We have a couple of relationships with funds that we've had for a long time, but we're not a hedge fund recruiter. For us, and it's again going back to that investment in people, the merchant markets for us are where you can have, in my view, genuine longevity. And we say this to any person joining our business, whether they, and we've kind of stopped hiring grads per se, but any of the younger associates that join us, the first thing I always say is look, take my advice if you want, change it if you want, but invest in your relationships now. And if you meet a trader who's got 1 year's experience, and if they call you, pick up the phone, don't try and dodge it. Because who knows what's going to happen in 10 years' time. That trader that you speak to then could be the head of trading. And all of a sudden you can pick up the phone to an associate, a friend, a colleague in the market and have a conversation on a par with them, or on a level with them, as opposed to buyer and seller. It makes it that much easier to create those genuine relationships. And look, I'm not trying to say you and I are as thick as thieves, but I feel like we can have a genuine conversation
and
about.
We are.
Yeah, precisely. And it's that level of investment that you want to put into to your work. And I think it does pay dividends in the long run. I'm not trying to say it's a transactional relationship, but actually taking an interest in what people do, which, looping it back to the funds, I just sometimes don't think the funds are taking an interest in what's going on in the wider markets or the wider world markets.
And it's almost, I mean, and not to harp on this point too much, but it's almost by design.
Yeah, of course.
But right, I mean, this is a sort of, but you do have the exceptions, because obviously a place like Citadel cares. I mean, it's not a philosophical care, I would say, in that sense, but they care out of self-interest, to say, because at the end of the day, they build something that can withstand the test of time. And obviously size matters, and a little bit of good fortune, but good fortune comes to those who are really well prepared.
Yep.
And I think there's a difference between, again, you come to the touristy side and to the non-touristy side. Those that can and do invest in their own infrastructure, because a lot of the times, and I've heard some horror stories, and we're not going to name names clearly, but you come to a place where you kind of had the idea, oh my God, this will be so advanced, and these guys, they can read the stars like nobody else, even though it's a cloud cover. And you come there and they don't even know how to cascade products in power markets. They don't even know how to properly assess risk. They don't even know how to properly handle the data that continues to come in, right? And here we can, I'll make a little a leeway into, I come from the, so to say, utility world, right?
Yeah.
I started at Vattenfall, one of the most fundamental players, I would dare to say, that there ever was, because, and you can see with the history of some of the traders that came from there, absolutely, hugely successful, and it's not by chance, right? Because what was it? It was fundamentals, covered by the fact that you're dealing with humans on all sides, on the asset side, on the sales side, on the small consumer side, on the political side. I mean, I think you could maybe we'll do this for the next time. Just have a political podcast on all the opportunities and probably misfortune it brought to so many companies, because obviously you get stuck with a new law and then deal with it, right? But to start from MySpace, so when you have a place like Vattenfall, right, and then when you work your way up and you have a little bit of good fortune, but a little bit of good learning, and then you start to get bombarded actually by headhunters, right? And I can only speak from my perspective.
Shows you're doing something right, though.
Well, but also at times it becomes dehumanizing, right? Because you can tell almost like, and you certainly are not in this field, but that they're just running down a list of questions, that they're trying to feel you out, whether they can sell you somewhere. And most of the time, those are just fishing expeditions.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, fair enough. And as long as you, as who's being the fish, is understanding that, and it doesn't get to your ego and doesn't make you do stupid things, I think that's fair enough to understand. And
can I just jump?
Yeah.
Genuine. I don't think I've actually ever asked you this question. Does it affect the way you then go back to your day job? If you've been called by 2 or 3 search firms in over 2 weeks, do you then go back to your desk with your chest puffed out, thinking you're almost invincible and you can trade your way through anything, or do you lock it away? Like, what's the psyche behind it?
I mean, the psyche, I think, depends on how many seasons you had.
Okay.
Right? In the first few seasons, you're probably like, damn, that's pretty cool,
Yeah.
right? And you do come in a sense of, okay, I mean, good to know somebody wants to talk to me, you know, and obviously, obviously somebody else appreciates that, you know, through all of this madness that is the power and gas market and the energy commodity market in general, that the good bunch will swim up and will kind of stay up. And so that's a good feeling, because it's recognition in a sense. But to get to the gist of what you're saying, it can also in young people, and I've seen this many times, create very bad situations for them, because they had, and I've had a few like this in my team, and many people came through my desk and went on to have successful careers, and many who I would have thought would have been much more successful disappeared, because what happens is they do a few things good, have a good season, a second good season, they get paid, but then the ego becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Because you think that, oh, I know it all, my shit don't smell, I know it all, these guys don't know anything, the people around me and my team, and they forget very quickly who taught them and where they were taught, right? And I think that's a big problem that the young have.
That's the biggest thing that we're seeing at the moment, that you remove someone from that franchise,
Yeah.
from that flow-based business,
Yeah.
and you say, and again, not to diminish the funds too much, but you take them out of that lovely infrastructure and you say, here's a blank sheet of paper, you've got a Bloomberg terminal, you've got quite a lot of cash, and we've given you a big guarantee and a big sign-on, go make money, right? And then there's that emotional burden on your back, and you suddenly realize that, was it actually me that made that money, or was it Vattenfall that gave me the tools? Was it
RWE,
Eon, exactly,
whatever, yeah.
Right. And over the past year, we've seen a lot more people now going back to those businesses, because whether or not they want the comfort or the longevity of role or the less stress, or they've probably realized themselves that maybe it is those, or are those toys that I had. Maybe it was those 12 million customers I had in Germany, or those 8 million customers I had in the UK that I could just put my product into if things got bad.
In my lingo, it's right, you have a pull and you have a sink, right? And the pull is kind of, I can call upon energy or gas whenever I need it, and I can sink it right before I think the market's going to sink it somewhere, right? And not to talk bad about that, because it takes somebody of high quality to be able to handle all of that, because it's a lot of churn, let me tell you. It's a lot of information coming at you, and especially so, if I take my example, kind of at Vattenfall, lead term trader, which is basically everything quarter and ahead, you have so many people coming at you, basically saying, "Oh, Mirko, is this the right time to hedge our newts?" And not just Mirko, but their term team, their trading team, because at Vattenfall, and for all the things that people might read in the newspapers, but because it's a state-owned company and lots of political decisions, but the trading unit per se, right, which was built by, back in the day, by a few great people. I'm not sure if they want me to mention their names, so I won't this time.
One's still there who's great.
Yes, but those that need to know anyways. But it was built in such a way that you had utter transparency in transfer prices. You were not able to kind of game the asset, game the customer. It was this is what we're discussing. This is the liquidity price right now. Boom. Are we done or are we not done, right? And everything was always recorded. Everything was really transparent, and this transparency also in sharing our views, because as a trader, as an analyst, as somebody, I mean, your job is to take a lot of input and then really give as short and concise answers as you can to people. And you can't always be right, but you have to be able to give them a spectrum of choices, what will likely happen. And within that parameter, to be able to work in a big utility. I mean, Vattenfall back then, over, I think, 20,000 megawatt installed all over Europe, from nukes to gas to coal to water to, there was really no type of power plant we didn't have. And so this was a great lesson to me. And to all those that work there, and they're now at very good seats and have done very well for themselves and their team and their employers. But then you come to the kind of situation, and I think you mentioned it, is the kind of the human relationships that after, for instance, me, I had 13 seasons at Vattenfall. I mean, this feels like dog years, probably 50 years of my life, And then when it came time for me, and this was then probably also the head of trading saw this, and we were able to come to an agreement, and then to say, you know what, I need to take some time off. Because this was just, guys, this was wild. Yeah. This was just so much. And so basically from 2005 to 2018, right? Start of 2018, I think it was the departure, where basically you did all this every day, and then you stop. And then it's so weird. Because I can only speak personally. It's not like falling into a hole, but it's like,
what's the purpose now, almost?
Like because it's like shell shock. It's when you speak to people, and it's not the same, but it's a little bit similar. People who've been to war and hear bullets flying, and they hear them flying at night, and they feel like they're hearing them whizzing. And there goes the old saying, if you can hear the bullet, it's okay. Yeah. Right. So, and it was.
You hearing the squawker box or the brokerage box in your sleep?
Right. Literally this. And I remember I would wake up, because a lot of the time I commuted between Berlin and Hamburg and Stockholm and Amsterdam and whatnot. And when I stopped, I would wake up at night and be like, oh shit, I gotta go to the airport again. Oh no, I don't. And then you're like, oh, I gotta read the news. No, I don't.
Must be tough, right?
It is really like weaning. I mean, I wouldn't know, but it must be like weaning yourself off of a massive habit that, like, I mean, I used to play tennis before that, and it was very much the same when I stopped playing tennis, because I played from when I was 7, 8 years old, then went to volatiles, and then college, and then it's almost like you lose part of yourself because it was a part of you for so long. But then I started remembering why I wanted to quit. And it wasn't so much I wanted to quit and I'm done and I'm going to go to pension. No, it was like, I need to relax a bit because this cannot be healthy, right?
And you had kids?
No, this was, I mean, I got very fortunate during the time then that I left. I met my now wife, and then we got married, and we got our daughter. And so it all fit into this perfect time frame. Obviously blessings, but for many people, they don't have the luxury of then actually being able to spend so much time with your newborn and So I'm been very fortunate and very fortunate in many aspects in life, but then you kind of come to thinking, okay, well, all these years I was in the energy trading world, and you have all these relationships, whether it was with you, it was with some brokers, with some other traders, and you kind of stay in touch with people, not because you have to, because you want to. And right, and some people call it, oh, but you're just friends in commerce. No, I wouldn't call it that, because I mean, when you are in trenches with people, okay, this may be more of people you actually work with on a day-to-day basis, but also because, somebody like you and in your company, and we can come to that in a second, how you guys placed me after being out of the market for not such a long time, year and a half, maybe two. I started December 2019, I believe, in Litasco in Chiasso. Yes, it was almost 2 years, right? And one of the things was, I remember thinking to myself, well, what's the right time to be out?
There isn't.
There isn't.
No, absolutely not.
And I think you mentioned as well that you took some time off,
Yeah.
and how did you find your experience?
You need that. You need that circuit break. You really do. And as much stress as we have, I personally don't think I could sit there knowing that I'm holding someone else's money and having millions of dollars of risk, $1 million of VAR. I don't think I could do it. So hats off to you guys. But from my perspective, having that break was what I needed, and thank God HC allowed me to have that, because I actually went off and did a property course, which they kindly put me through, and I said, look, I need to stop. Going back to when I first joined HC, I said, I'm going to do this for a year, 2 years, and then see what I want to do after that, and whatever happens will happen. And then you roll it forward 9, 10 years, and you're like, okay, stayed here 8 years longer than I thought I was going to. So I needed a break, and it was bizarre because I went off to go into property, and then after a short period of time, I just thought to myself, look, I kind of miss, maybe not so much the market, but miss the relationships, miss talking about it. And I set up a small boutique business, and I still kept those relationships. I mean, look, one of the individuals I met way back when from BP now has my 3rd season ticket at West Ham, and we go as much now with 3 kids.
It must be painful for
West
West Ham.
Ham. It's really tough.
It's okay,
especially after last night's result. But yeah, look, it's nice to have those relationships, right? And even those that retire. I mean, there's a number of individuals that have retired that I still play golf with, that still catch up with, because it's the old adage, right? The people you work with, you spend more time with them than you do your family. So you need to get on with them, and you need to have some form of relationship. Otherwise,
Yes.
work can be really monotonous
Yes.
and really tough,
Yes.
especially if you're traveling and you get home late. And I've just had a third. He's now a year and a half, but I mean, I don't get to see him as much as I do as my 2 older girls, right? So you need to weigh up saying, is this what I actually want to do? Because you're investing a lot of time, effort, and your formative
yourself,
years.
yeah,
100%. And I think you need that break, right? And the amount of people, and you're probably seeing it a lot at the moment as well, the amount of people that have retired in inverted commas, and I don't know if it's a genuine retirement or they did it with the best will and intention, but there's a fair percentage that after a year, 2 years, 3 years, get those itchy feet.
You miss it.
Yeah, 100%.
You
Because
miss
you're
it.
still quite, in comparative terms, you're still quite young.
Yes.
Like we're seeing people now, and off the back of some phenomenal years in 22 and 23, retiring in their late 30s and early 40s. You're trying to tell me that for the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of their working career, they can travel the world, play golf, whatever it might be, right? Whatever tickles your
It all
fancy.
gets old.
Yeah, give it a bit of time.
You don't have purpose.
We're still getting calls from people that have been out for 2 years, 3 years saying, I'm now interested in doing NED work or board work. And then after 6 months, that then turns to actually I could do some consultancy work, which then obviously turns to actually I want to come back in. But I do 100% agree with your thoughts there that you need that circuit breaker, and to do something like you did in your years out is, phenomenal.
And I think one of the and this goes maybe back to the dehumanizing part of our industry. a lot of people like to, and I think it's especially those that are certainly most certainly glued to their chairs, and because they know they can't do any better. When they say, "Oh, but if you've been out of the market for a year or two, that's a catastrophe. You probably won't make it." Right? I mean, look, comme ci, comme ça, right? It really, you cannot give with a broad stroke a statement like this.
I think there are some roles where that would, like origination, for example. If you lose you're in origination seat and you lose your contacts, it might be tough to get back in. Analytics, right, majority of middle and back office you can jump back into. Yeah. Trading, I think that the past 2 years, past 3 years, in relative terms, you could probably create 7-8 years worth of experience out of it, right? So if you hadn't been trading in those years, you'd come back in now and think, oh, nothing much has changed from 2020, 21, if you strip out those phenomenal years. So I don't subscribe to that at all. I think if you're good enough at what you do, you can slot back in quite easily.
And then especially, I mean, and this is probably visible in the last few quarters, people who've only seen this, you know, they forget that the cure for high prices are high prices. Yeah, exactly. And it can be a very small door to the exit.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I will shamelessly plug what I did on my few years. Although I would say I'm not the only one. I think I've heard of, and I know many people who so diligently worked behind computers, and it's sort of a virtual but physical world, because right, especially if you come from the utility space or the large energy space, merchant space, right? You're moving things from A to B, but you're doing it digitally, but then somebody's doing the physics for you, right? And so this kind of I don't know if you would call it apprehension, but this basically being, you have to be attached but utterly detached, because the numbers are so big, the volumes are so big, that what you were mentioning is like a normal person shouldn't be able to handle, I don't know, 50 years worth of fuel supply for a small city. Right? I mean, it's
when you hear
absurd.
Some of these, when we hear some of these drawdown numbers and VARs and P&Ls, you actually can't comprehend them. And the issue that we find is when we hear normal numbers, you almost look down on them a little bit. But in the grand scheme of things, they're phenomenal numbers. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's numbed us. Some of these numbers, right. It's numbed us to reality.
And it's almost like in an emergency room, the doctor by definition has to be numb. He has to just save lives.
Yeah.
He cannot, and obviously it must leave a mark on your soul when you're losing people and et cetera, et cetera. You can't compare it to what we do, but when bad decisions are made, companies go under and people lose their jobs. Countries can go under, right? If wrong decisions are made. And now, without going too much into politics here, but when you have people like you have, for instance, in Germany, and they decide in all of their wisdom, why don't we turn off all these nuclear power plants, and it's okay, we'll, you know, the wind will save us. And then this winter, you're starting to see the Dunkelflaute. Like you can see that these decisions that were made on behalf of all of us, because, right, I mean, in the European flow-based model, the prices and the problems travel everywhere. And it's not for nothing that people in the Nordics who have great availability say, guys, we're going to cut some of our cables to continental Europe, because what the hell did you decide? And this brings me then to my shameless plug. I wanted to see if this renewable revolution was actually possible in a small scale. And I think we'll just shamelessly show 2 videos, but it's really more of to show what. So I wanted to do something off-grid, you know, facetious zombie apocalypse, whatever. And who cares about everyone? I want to be able to survive, right?
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to see was, can you really, through solar, through batteries, and through a backup generator, bring life to a place where there wasn't anything there, right? And we're on the island of Brač, and we're on an elevation between 380 meters up to 450, 60 meters in height, and we have a plot of land that's about 50,000 square meters, and now we have about 350 olive trees planted. We have immortale, we have all these nice things. But basically my conclusion is that yes, it's possible, but you definitely need a massive backup generator, because if you want to have all the comforts of life, and by comforts of life, I don't mean heavy industry.
No,
I just
agree.
mean like AC,
Yeah.
which can be a heater, fridges, TVs, heated pool, and kind of all these things. Because, I mean, I say heated pool, but
One would say that's not living off grid, but I know what you. Yeah.
But,
sorry, yeah.
but because it does tend to freeze where we are, and it actually tends to snow there in the winter. But so my point basically being, so the energy revolution is possible, but it takes such an overbuild of capacity in solar that it doesn't make sense without a backup generator.
Yeah.
Because your battery, the constant loading and unloading and the life cycles, they're not unlimited. So that's the first thing. Things tend to break is the second thing. As we have seen, we've had problems with hail. We've had problems with the Sahara sand, where it goes all up on your solar panels. You've had simple problems like your generator breaking down because the on-off switch, because you have an so to say, an automatic on and off switch, which basically when the level of your battery goes below a certain point, it turns on the generator, and it kind of fills up the battery to above a critical level, and then it kind of coincides hopefully with the morning of solar coming, and et cetera, et cetera. And then one of the main things is, because, I mean, we don't just use it for us, we also rent the place out, and we like to see our guests enjoy it. But we warn our guests. We say it will only function if you behave responsibly. And I think this is exactly for our society and stuff. Everything can function, but if you do it responsibly. And responsibly does not mean you leave the jacuzzi on for 24 hours a day, because then it will black out. It means when you are done in a room, turn off the light, even though lights have become the least of our problems because it's so efficient, right? But it's the startup phase of the air conditioning. It's the startup phase of, induction heating, for instance, in a kitchen. I never knew. It is one of the biggest energy drains possible.
It's all infrastructure, right? Like we have this in the UK. If you take a street in the UK of 30 houses one side, 30 houses the other side, if every house on that street was to hook up their EV, there'd be rolling blackouts. And there were blackouts just before eWorld. I remember across Germany and in Sweden for a couple of hours here and there, right? You wouldn't be seeing this unless you were going through an energy transition. And the amount of new businesses, and not to steal too much of your thunder here, but the amount of businesses that we're seeing building flex teams, building capacity teams, building kind of behind the meter intraday businesses, and it's almost putting it back on the customer, on the retail. And if you're clever with your power consumption, and I know in the grand scheme of things, the returns you're going to make from selling your power back to the grid, they're not groundbreaking, right? But if every house on every street does that, you suddenly create your own intraday housing market, intraday power housing market, where suddenly the grid...
You're a prosumer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if eWorld, that was all the conversation, right? Prosuming or prosumer, battery storage, how you can get batteries from 2 hours to 4 hours to 8 hours to potentially even longer, and how you run your grids effectively. And unfortunately, the world's, and I know this is a very kind of different topic, and maybe we do have that chat about politics, but the world's growing so quickly that infrastructure can't catch up with it. And we've had so many, there's so many transition revolutions that a lot of businesses are trying to swing by. But all we've seen is just a reversion to the mean. And it's going back to fossil fuels, back to hydrocarbons. And why? Because they're making so much money for those companies that suddenly the importance of battery storage or short-term power or flexibility or capacity doesn't matter as much, because the corporate ownership will generate much greater income from that fossil fuel hydrocarbon market. Slightly off topic, I know.
No, but it's not.
It's
actually
making a real,
true.
yeah.
And I will give you a perfect example. it's conflicting interests. And people might say, well, what do you mean? The interest should be a clean energy future. Yeah. The interest is staying alive, food, clothing,
Yeah.
heat, cold, getting to tomorrow and
Yeah.
having a better future for our children than we had. And I think for the first time in a long time in America, I saw this. People are expecting a worse life for their children and grandchildren than they had for themselves, which certainly cannot be the goal of what we're doing over here, right? And then, but I come back to my point. So I did this, and some of my conclusions, and as I mentioned, is without a backup, it doesn't work. But when it works, I will give you a great number. We used I believe this was season 2023, 6 liters of biodiesel for 150 days of guests, and nothing was missing for them. But I must say we had great guests who understood, don't turn on the air conditions all at once. When you turn it on, put it on an automatic setting. Wash your clothes when it's the highest sun. Wash the dishes when it's the highest sun. And so we learned and we gave instructions.
I mean, even still, 6 liters.
6 liters, that is F all, right? Coming back then next season, and this is, not a blame game, but I think it was like 800 liters.
Wow.
In a similar, it was like 130 days or 100.
Weather changes or customer changes?
Customer and weather changes.
Okay.
And weather changes in the sense that we had so many rainy days for our clients. It's very unfortunate, right? And okay, we have a movie theater inside, and we have pool, and I think as you Brits say, there's no bad weather, only bad clothes. But not necessarily when you're somewhere in the summer and you want to hang out by the pool or the beach.
Yeah, no, of course.
Right? And so my point being, it works, but you cannot have without backup generation, right? And that is the thing. Some seasons you will be laughing because in the end, right, it's a big capital investment up front. And how do I reap the benefits? Well, I reap the benefits only if I don't have fuel cost, which I didn't have in the season 23. But then, okay, forward to season 24, that fuel cost is not a neck breaker at all. I mean, in the scheme of things, but it shows you. And what also happens is the equipment has to work so much harder when it's not perfect outside. On, off, on, off, on, off. And then especially when you're on an island like Brač in Croatia, it takes 15 minutes to drive to the shop. But that's 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. You have to get somebody to fix it. And I'm very fortunate that I have somebody who runs this, who is knowledgeable from electricity to piping to this to that. And without him, I really wouldn't know how this would function, because you would literally need so many maintenance people, right? And this is where we come to what you were saying. Yeah, there's a competition for all of this now, but it will be we won't have, because you can't just, I need a transformer, give it to me. It takes some time. I mean, I'm just shameless plug for Končar, for instance, a great Croatian company. I think they're sold out on those transformers for years and years ahead. You cannot get ahead of line, right? And also all the people that are retiring, that are in maintenance and stuff, there won't be people to maintain this.
Well, it's a tough, right? And I'm not trying to cast a negative shadow across the industry, but we've seen so many, whether it be ammonia, hydrogen, methanol projects being shelved because
the math doesn't add up.
Precisely, right? And I remember, I won't name names, but for a very big oil major, they were running, I think, at the time, 12 hydrogen mobility projects. And within a year, they'd shelved 9 of them because they were reallocating capital because it didn't make financial sense. And no, I'm not trying to cast a view as to why, but my gut instinct would be the 3 of those markets, maybe with the exception of ammonia to a degree, they're not necessarily traded markets at the moment. They're originated and length or term markets. And if I'm a company who has a bottom line P&L to to return to whether it be shareholders or investors.
People to answer to.
Yeah, like where would I rather put my money into? Would it be nat gas, power, oil, or would it be energy transition products, or you let someone else develop batteries and then in 2 years' time you take that from them instead? Probably the latter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it does. I totally agree. And look, if I was to show you my utilities bill from living in London, what you probably spent on 6 litres of biodiesel, you would probably have a heart attack looking at my utilities bill. I mean, cost of energy wherever you are, I think is just going.
And these are decisions that were made, and kind of the good intentions. Yeah, they line the way to hell, and look. Hopefully, people see the writing on the wall, and some things will be kind of. Look, you will get this massive nuke on in the UK, and you guys are learning your lessons, and hopefully the same lessons are being actively learned in Germany.
Yeah,
right?
well, I mean, it comes back to it. And not to go too much back to the recruitment, but we're getting a lot of requests now from clients who are asking us to go direct to the commission. So taking people directly out of Brussels to put on their power trading desks or nat gas trading desks or carbon in particular, to say, help us understand legislation so we know where to position ourselves and not act as lobbyists for projects, but to understand where those changes are going to happen. Because I know we were discussing offline before, but something has to give, right?
Something has to give.
And whether it's now, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, whether it's 5 years, there's going to come a straw that does break that camel's back. And not to be too dour, but hopefully it's not too cataclysmic. But it's not. Again, going off topic, it's not great at the moment.
But I mean, look, and it will be what it will be, and I think for us traders, it's never a wishing concert.
No.
But I think people became complacent in a sense that the party will never end and it will always be sunshine and perfect. But look, I think what people want to know as well is kind of. In the background, and one of the lessons that I got was, it's just people sitting in front of screens, and some have better computers, some don't. But from your experience, what makes a great team? What do you guys look for in a kind of in a developing market as we are now? But I mean, it's almost stupid to say our market's always been developing.
Yeah,
that's like, it's clear. What would you say are some of the key ingredients you would look for? Look for your clients?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. So we've actually started revisiting this ourselves over the past couple of months in the way that we. It all starts from a job brief, right? And not to get too recruitment on you here, but if you can't understand if you can't understand the client's needs, you don't know what you're looking for. And if you think you know the client's needs, ask them to make sure, because my vision of what might be right for, and let's use Greg and Omar as an example, right? My vision for what Greg and Omar might want might be totally different than if I'd actually sat down with them and spent 2 hours with them saying, talk me through why you want a gas and power team now, right? And we did that. And given the time when the guys were first formulating the views of entering into gas and power, it was still quite pie in the sky, quite blue sky thinking. So it wasn't a case of, right, let's go out and do a full market search for you like we've done for a number of other clients where we put big teams in. It was actually, let me understand you two as individuals. Greg, what do you like? Omar, what do you like? Because the people that we put in, given this is a new beginning for you, like we've done a lot of team moves to companies that have already got the underlying product. So it's a little bit easier for management to grasp what they're buying. But for two guys who, one's crude, one's gasoline, both quite young, it's a new market for them. So there was a degree of, and this isn't supposed to sound condescending at all, but there's a degree of education on the gas and power markets, right? And I know you went through that as well when you met with the guys and the team. So for us, it starts from the brief. What do you want to get out of this? Do you want a standalone trader that's going to make X amount of money, give you X amount return on deployed capital? Or do you want a 10, 15-year business? And if you want the former, fine, we can do that, but it's a very different market that we're going to be approaching for someone that we want as a team. So now when we get on these briefs, it's actually, and we're really delving into kind of scoring, matrix, understanding what's going to rank high on the agenda. And it can come across as a slightly laborious process. But if your client's not willing to invest an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours at the beginning of the process to go through this, our response is, do you actually really want this? And if you can't give us 2 hours of your time just to understand what's going to rank the highest in terms of individual, team, return, product, skill set, then you probably don't want to bring on a business, right? And it's a lot easier if you're just hiring a quant or an analyst or a trader or an originator, just a singular. So for us, it's all about what's the long-term plan, what's the return you want, but more importantly, what's the team ethos that you're striving for? And what's the relationship like when you go to market between those that you're putting into that business? Because we've had it in the past where we've kind of picked 4 or 5 people from different organizations that may have worked with each other in the past, but you almost have to, right, it's almost dominoes or chess. Is this person going to fit with this person? Is that person going to fit with that one? And but very similar, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but you and Ante, right? You weren't at the same organization. You known each other in the past. It helps that you're similar kind of backgrounds, nationalities. But it's like, how are you two going to work? And then again with the analysts as well and the rest of the team, it's how they're going to fit into what it was then a smaller office. Interpersonally, what are they like? Can they vocalize their theories, their views, not just to you, but can you do the same to Greg and Omar? And it's an education process, an understanding process.
Non-stop.
But we also need to know you.
Yes.
And this is the differentiator, right? And this is going to show my age a little bit. I started at HC when LinkedIn didn't exist. So we had to speak to people on the phone.
Old school.
We had to meet people. And now with the rise of LinkedIn, I think anyone could turn up
You
to
just
Fly
get bombarded by messages.
Here are 20 people that's very
Absurd.
gas, right? But what LinkedIn can't do is it can't sit in front of a client and say, this individual, he splits his time between Croatia and Zurich. He's got a daughter. He can only travel X amount of times. You have to get past his wit. Do you know what I mean? It's actually selling the person, and you can't do that unless you know the person.
Yes.
So for us, it's invest your time in meeting them, invest your time in understanding them, and invest your time in working out their motivations.
Yes.
And also the client's motivations. Otherwise, it just won't work. And look, as I said at the beginning, right, there's been instances where we put people into businesses, and on paper it should work. In reality, it hasn't.
And you know what? And that's fair enough. It happens.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
and as long as people kind of, and I've had the experience where, you know, although you thought things were clear and were clearly communicated, then in the heat of the moment, once you start, and you know, sometimes people,
the goalposts change.
not only does the goalpost change, but whatever is written in the contract, they're like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
I'll sue you to kingdom come. Good luck.
Touch wood, we haven't had that yet.
Like I didn't have that, and because again, it comes to, you have to be human at the end of the day, and I had a situation when we were very human about it, and I think you were then later on involved, and that was it. It just didn't work out, and then the best is an early stop, right? Rather than dragging things out and whatnot, and I would say.
And that's partly our job as well, right? It's
Well, you didn't place me there, so I can't blame you for that. So
it's the hardest thing for us as a sales industry, which we are, to turn around to yourself and to the client and say, I don't think this is going to work. Let's just stop now.
Yeah.
Because there's all the analogies, like bury your head in the sand and this, or just hope it happens and just kind of carry away and say, if I don't get involved, it might work. It's actually saying, look, yeah, this is going to be detrimental to our bottom line, but I'm doing the right thing. And it's tough to have that. And I assume it's probably very similar to you saying, I like the look of that trade, but I know it probably is not going to make money. So I'm not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Although there's a niggling thing in your back of your mind saying, but if I stick to it, I can. Same with us, right? So there has to be that element of discipline saying, look, guys,
it's not working.
It's not working. But you can only do that from a position of trust.
Yes.
If I just started working with a client, I say it's not, they're going to say, well, how do you know? We've been working with each other for 3 weeks. I've been working with that client for 10 years. They're going to say, all right, you know what? I trust Dan. Well, at least I hope that's what they'd say. I trust Dan. Yeah, fine, I agree with that. Let's move on to the next. And then there has to be that kind of relative cold-hearted approach, or just
The
reality kicks in.
face reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Face reality, and I think people underestimate.
Embrace the no, right?
Yes, but people like to hear immediately if it is what it is.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, oh, let's have a 3-week conversation, then at the end I'm going to drop a hint that basically I need you to leave.
Yeah.
Start with that.
Yeah.
Start with that, and then we work our way up the ladder of issues. And I think in closing, when you're going from one place to another, I mean, there's people who like to burn bridges. It's probably not the best way to go about it. And I think in your business, and you know this better than I do, but you always see somebody twice. You know, you see somebody on the way up, you see somebody on the way down, and you see somebody on the way up again. And it's really not the ego, the wrong ego, and the kind of, and it's a little bit of a still a mystery to me, because in some sense, as a trader, and if you want to, because it's never just one trader who makes humongous returns.
No.
And obviously you guys, when you placed me at Litasco, who knew? Who knew, right? But then people knew,
Yeah.
right? And that kind of reality of keeping in touch with somebody and them actually following your career actually in your next step, and then being like, well, this place never took prop positions. What the hell did you do? And again, it wasn't just me, but I laid the seed in the sense of, this is the information I have. Guys, I'm telling you, chances are this will go down this way, this is the pathway. But then you have to be annoying to your boss, to his boss, and then the old saying comes, beware what you wish for, it just might come true. When it comes true and you are in the position and you are taking massive positions that, without going into the numbers now, but obviously very significant, they don't happen overnight.
No.
But when it happens, it feels like it's overnight, but there was so much work that had to go through it. There were calls at 3 in the morning, hey buddy, we have our CEO, he's in South Korea now, and he wants to know, WTF are you guys doing here? And then you're like, there at 3 in the morning, you're like, holy shit, I don't have a coffee machine. Oh, but there's a Red Bull. So,
But that comes, and without going into the numbers too much, right? That all comes down to trust.
without
all it
gaining
is.
the trust of your
Exactly.
uppers,
That's all it is.
and you know,
And skill. But a lot of it is trust in those around you. And again, not mentioning
nobody losing their nerve.
Precisely, right. And we witnessed that more so in 22, where whatever the spread was, but we heard CEOs of some very big companies calling the lead trader saying, time to get out, and those that held their nerve made billions, right? But it is all trust. That's all it is. And if you've got the support of those around you, which at the time at the Tasco you did, you're able to do that. Fast forward, and
As a team.
Yeah,
But I really want
exactly.
to underline
Yeah.
that I think this mystery, you know, and some people say, oh, the superstar traders and this and that. Yes, somebody came up with a great idea. Wow, good job. But it's the holding it.
Yeah.
It's keeping your middle officer calm, keeping your boss calm, keeping his boss calm, keeping the banks calm. And how can you do that? It's really repetition, and sometimes sometimes the ego plays a trick on you, and you're just like, guys, I have a videotape from the last session. Should I just play it and save us all some time? Yeah. Right? But then when you have real leaders, and I was very lucky to have some, you know, combination of massive cojones and some lots of knowledge, and one of the things that sticks out to me, and this you probably don't have at many places, was from back at that space, and I see a very similar energy here at Onyx is, okay, so we're going to have a meeting now. We're going to talk about all these things, but we already know what we decided. So let's just do that.
And that,
because you had 100 meetings before that led to this one meeting, but this is going to be the important one. But then you need leadership to say, yeah, man, we're going to do this. and this is being done. And, you know, we're going to swim together or sink together.
And look, without going too full circle, it's when you said how do you work out what a good team looks like, right? I was having those conversations with Onyx about gas and power before you highlighted that you were not so happy, or you're not Latasco, but the one after that. And as soon as you and I had that conversation again, I could have touted however many businesses that I thought would have fit your skill set. And I don't know if you remember, but I said, look, why don't you have a conversation with Onyx? And you kind of, down the phone, you said, who? And I said, trust me, just go and meet them. And I remember this, and not trying to go too much down memory lane, but after your first meeting, I think you were with them for like an hour and a half. You said, if they can do what they say they can do, this place is phenomenal. And it's, can they follow through, right? And we hadn't really shown that many people to the Onyx business, because I just thought that there needed to be that relationship that fits, right? They needed a bit of grey hair, like, not too disrespectful.
It's coming.
They needed someone who's been in the industry, seen it, that could help educate them into what gas and power looks like, what gas and power does. And I thought, look, relationship wise, it'll be quite a good fit, and touch wood, as far as I know, it's still going quite well. Yeah, precisely, right.
We'll know at the end, as the Germans say, hinten packt die Ente, the duck shits in the back. So, you know, we'll see.
Maybe cut that bit from this.
No, it's cool. Martin will keep it, I'm pretty sure.
No, but it's all, and again, right, it's knowing what will work in the business. And when you were talking about Latasco, great management, great leadership, I gather it's probably a very different type of management leadership here, just in terms of like age, experience, markets, right? Very different markets that both have covered. And I know age doesn't play a factor, so I probably shouldn't have mentioned that, but it's
ageism. How dare you?
No, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm
how
feeling
dare
more
you?
at the moment. But I think it's that, it's mentor to mentee and how it works. And I think everyone needs that type of relationship. And I totally subscribe to being part of a collegiate business as opposed to a business based around individuals. Like, not to give up too much about the inner workings of HC, but I know for anyone that's listening that probably isn't in recruitment, or maybe even some that are, would think everyone has their name on a board with their number. We do none of that, right? It's all just teams. So no one knows what individual does what. We don't like to promote that ego side of it. It's like you're one business unit, you're one team. You've got a great banner in HC above you. So act as a team rather than a group of individuals.
All hands on deck.
Yeah, precisely.
Right, and I think this is what, because, I mean, Onyx is in such a growth phase, and you can see it feels like a startup, although they have, you know, they trade so much and they do so much, where again, I think this outside wisdom that HC Group offers, I mean, obviously shamelessly plugging Dan and Paul, but that's okay. But it is fact that how could they know?
Yeah.
It's not their business to know.
Yeah.
And so, because thank God none of us are communists, this is where the added value comes in, right? And
we're a broker of intel as well as broker of individuals.
right, and because this intel relationship, as you said, you're not going to say everything to everybody. You're not going to say something. This guy, I just sent her the text on LinkedIn. Oh, I'm going to tell him everything. No,
we can't. Yeah.
Right.
So we're quite, and we've had issues in the past, right? So we're now quite sensitive around data and information and what we put out there, because we're so close to the action,
to the
and
source,
that we do need to be careful about what we say, because it can have I mean, I remember there was a news article in one of the trade publications about 10 years ago where someone, not a recruiter, but someone said a move was happening in a trade publication, and the company they were leaving, they were a listed business, their share price dropped by 7%, just based on an individual leaving, right? And I'll tell you after when we have a drink to celebrate. But yeah, so we need to be careful about what we put out there. So for us, we're sensitive and we safeguard data, but to enable our own growth and to enable other companies' growth, we have to aggregate that data, anonymize it, but also package it up in a way that can help businesses grow. we're not talking personal data,
Yeah.
structural, that type of
Yeah.
stuff, right?
But also, I imagine you, I mean, sometimes when you're dealing with, let's say maybe not so old, 43, but when you're dealing with a younger generation that gets a bunch of numbers thrown into them, it's a lot of also coaching that you must give them, right? It's like, man, calm down. Don't call everybody and your mother.
Yeah.
Don't tell everybody. Things still with the lawyers. Be quiet.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not easy because people, and often and more. I mean, look, our business is a meritocracy as it gets, right? Of course, you have, but when I say our business, I say really the traders and the analysts and such. Obviously, at really big places and big utilities, without getting into names, is of course you have people who live off the substance. Of course you have people who are opportunists, who are shameless politicians, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's us traders who manage the assets and who bring enough value so that these people can have meetings to have meetings to have meetings. Oh, but let's have a workshop, let's have a new business plan, let's have project X, project XYZ. And so I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, through proxy with all the people that you work with, that people can get very disappointed, right, at the organizations where they are, because in their little world everything is perfect, the team is really struggling, really doing good work and hard things, and then you have people up above or on the political side that just piss it all away, and you're just like, how is there not accountability, right? Because we come from a world where accountability and feedback is almost immediate. And I come from my place, but you probably know this best. Traders can get really down on themselves because you did something, blah, blah, blah. But that's last season. Now it's new season, right? And it's always on the clock, always new. But yet, as you said, so many of us who were in a seat for a long time and then took some time off, to get a good perspective is important in life. And when you miss something, when you miss something that you were good at, and it shows also when you return, I believe, because as you said, you also don't prescribe to the people should be able to take some time off without getting, LinkedIn punished for it. And you actually see a lot of people on LinkedIn being very honest about some of the issues they face with, also especially on the older crowd, and which is very symptomatic, I think, to our society, where older people were simply not treated well and not respected for all the wisdom and knowledge they have. But it also comes back to this, almost in a sense, slave labor / labor of catastrophe, in the sense of, we have a bunch of young people, we can throw them away. And I know it's not never said in the business plan, but it's almost understood. We have a bunch of these young guys, whatever. If 50% of them fall away, we still got another one. And so then a lot of wisdom simply gets thrown away, or is not allowed to enter back into the market, which it's not a good thing, I think, right? Because especially now, you need people to be able to step on the brakes and say, guys, these are fundamentals. They will work.
Yeah.
Just give it some time.
It's an interesting dichotomy at the moment that we're seeing, because we've seen a new wave of skill set entering the market, right? And I think power is probably the most obvious and best kind of microcosm of the wider trading markets, where the most relevant skill set that we're seeing at the moment is probably quantitative in mindset, or systematic in trading mindset. So it's how to extract value out of a business, right? And if you look at 22, and not to hark on too much about those years, but 22 and 23 in my mind just papered over a lot of the cracks of an inefficient market, because people made too much money in a black swan event. You're now returning to some semblance of normality, which, if you strip out those boom years, still resembles one of the most profitable years that a lot of companies have ever had. But there are inefficiencies in trading desks, and how you eke out that incremental value in your business is by unlocking it through better data sets, better skill sets, and better access to real-time info, right? So we're seeing...
And best practices
yeah.
of how to collect this data.
Exactly.
And it really, because shit in, shit out.
Exactly, right? So the biggest growth area, and by virtue, and I'm not trying to label anyone, analysts are just younger than some senior traders, right? It's has always been a stepping stone into trading. I think that's now changing. I think you can create a career out of that. In fact, I'm fundamentally sure you can create a career out of analytics because of the comp you're getting paid for it. But we've spoken about this, right? It's all well and good building a desk of phenomenal quants, fundamentals, trade, market analytics, data engineering, data science. You still need that aggregator, whether it's 1, 2, 3 people, and whether it be in a systematic role or a discretionary role or a fundamental trading role, you still need that aggregator there to execute. So I do get what you're saying about we are seeing an influx of younger talent, but also when companies aren't working, yeah, it's right, last in, first out. We are seeing that. And I don't think you should shunt the older generation because they're classed as kind of too much of a fossil of an industry. And it's, oh, back in my day scenario, right? We hear that a lot. I think there's an aggregation of mindsets that needs to happen. And if you marry up the old with the new school, it's especially giving credence to the old school with phenomenal data sets.
Yes.
You've got a real strong business on your hands, but it's convincing both parties that they can be symbiotic of each other and work hand in hand, as opposed to two opposing forces saying, I'm a quant desk, you're a discretionary desk, let's see who makes the most money. That shouldn't happen. It's actually how do you create an overlap, right? Which is tough to...
Egos.
Yeah.
Egos come in the way, right?
Yeah, totally, yeah. Back to it again, right? It's, yeah, absolutely. And you've got a lot of the... I'm loath to say it, but the younger generation who are far more systematic and quantitative in nature, that have done incredibly well over the past 5 to 10 years. And there's almost a case of the, I don't know, Wolf of Wall Street mindset, right? Puff the chest, beat the chest. I've made this, I've made that. And again, going back to it, have you made that, or has the business enabled you to do that? So from a recruiting perspective, we're seeing that so much more, right?
It's a danger zone when somebody says a lot of I.
Absolutely.
Because he doesn't
marry that up.
He doesn't have a conscious understanding. He's not alone in the world, right? But this is the problem of timing. When does the ego need to be big enough to say to the young guys, we did all this analysis, it's still a scenario.
Yeah.
You can't buy shit with it. Only at the end of the day, if we're correct, will we have turned something in the digital realm into real capital and gains and great, fantastic. But the pathway the road to that is not going to be easy. It's going to be volatile and wild. Yeah. But and I point onto the other room, onto our trading room, and the much larger trading room in London. Finding calmness in the madness.
It's tough.
And those situations of clarity. I mean, because if you do something just to make money, your judgment will be clouded. But if you're allowing yourself to hear the winds of change, and to feel it, then money will be the end result. And I think a lot of the younger guys, and because it's also dangerous, easy come, easy go, right? A lot of the people that I know get some silly ideas, and they think they can just, it's going to be like this forever. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
And this factor of humility, I think, is important. Yeah.
One of the biggest things that stood out for me last year is someone I know quite well in the market, and he'll recognise who it is when I say, I won't say who. He said the best trade I ever did last year was risk off, and I doubt majority of people in the market last year would have said that coming off the back of 2023, still trying to chase it. But and I'm not trying to say, and this is an individual who has a huge amount of capital at their disposal to deploy. it takes a lot to be able to say I'm not touching this space.
No, this is the hardest thing to do because everybody's screaming and shouting at you.
Yeah.
You are missing out. You are missing out. You are missing out. But and I try to explain this. A lot of the time, it is really about not making mistakes. Everybody will get some right. You flip a coin and be right 50% of the time, sometimes 51. But it's really about saying, you know what, this is too wild. And I can't in good conscience just keep flipping the coin. But it's very difficult to defend this. And whoever you're talking about, there's two ways of looking at it,
Of course, yeah.
The other guy will say, man, as long as the music is playing, you better be playing fucking musical chairs, buddy. That's what I got you here for.
Yeah.
But on the other side, look at good old Warren, record cash pile. Why?
Exactly.
I mean,
Structured.
I bet you this guy can't even use an Excel sheet. He doesn't need to. He has tens of thousands of people who do it for him, but that's not the point because what he basically knows is it's these moments of exuberance, they don't last. They don't last, and it is this what your friend and said this. When is the time not to do anything? And just by anything, he probably means staying within a very low VAR, and for him comparatively, because you want to fill your days with a little bit of something, right? But
when the rest of the market is, and if you take 3 weeks ago or a month ago as an example, right? Our phones were quite literally lighting up non-stop. Have you heard this? Have you heard that? Have you seen this person's been let go? Have you seen that? This person's dropped X. This person's made Y. How have they made that amount of money in this market when everyone else is? To be able to sit there and say, I turned a profit in a bad year for the market. Or sorry, again, this goes back to just kind of quantifying what a bad is.
Yeah.
I made money in the third best year ever, which is now suddenly classed as a bad year. Good on you, right? You're not putting your company at risk.
Yeah.
And going back from when I first started, seen Lehman's go, Bear go. I mean,
it's insanity.
And you hear of some of these individuals that, like Nick Leeson, like a lot of these individuals dropping billions of company money, and back then they can't survive. Now, if granted, if there are some companies that can survive if a couple billion go missing, not through the.
But it's consciously, right? If you consciously know we really have this on the line,
why base it?
Fair enough. And I think probably all of the places that we're mentioning now that have been around, that are not tourists, they will say, had a few good years, so what?
It's sustainability.
Did we do it chaotically or did we do it systematically and planned? And you know what? General Dunkelflaute and then General Gas down came and.
But that's why whichever area of the market you're in, and look, I'm quite bullish merchant business as a whole, just because I think we're going to be building stuff across the world. You need to get things from A to B. Vattenfall has to be there because they've got a duty to supply gas and power. E.ON has to be there. They have to be there in some guys, right?
Yes.
So the companies that are still there in each of their markets, whether it be BP, Shell, Total, whether it be Vattenfall, EDF, Centrica, RWE, E.ON, whether it be Traf, Glencore, Gunvor, Mercuria, Vitol. On the fund side, there's probably 4 or 5 that will be there. I think they're the kind of the big 4 or 5 that have grown AUM from 10, 15 years ago, 5 billion each, to some now up to 70 billion, some at 60 billion. They will be there. So I think if you're a mainstay in your market and there's a reason to be in the market, good luck to you. I think and not to come full circle too much, but if you're jumping into the market, trying to kind of copy trade, bad time to do it.
Bad time.
Yeah, if there's a reason, and for us from recruiters, like selling those businesses is tough.
Yeah.
And we always go into now every conversation.
But please define when you say selling those businesses.
So we say with a lot of our clients, it's, look, what's the story behind it? And if you're talking about analytics is the best example at the moment, because as you probably very well know, power analytics is a really tough market to recruit into, because you can be pretty confident that every one of those companies I just mentioned is probably looking for the same profile. So if you're a company going in to look for that profile, whether it be Conti, East, CWE, whatever it might be, why should they join you? And then it comes back to what's your story, what's your reason, what's your identity. And if you don't have any of those, there's just no point taking on this search. No one's going to join it. If your only sales point is, we'll give you more money than the person next to us, that for me is a recipe for disaster. And if you're coming in saying, I'll give you 26, 28% a book, where the rest of the market's giving 15% a book, red flags again, unless there's a genuine reason behind it. I know some of those companies you mentioned are doing those numbers, but if you're a newer entrant who's just promising either cash up front, blank sheet of paper, no reason to be in the market, just don't be in it. Especially with given, and hopefully you'll test this, the way volatility's been over the past 6 to 9 months. And it's no reason why we've seen some companies pull out, because they just can't compete.
They don't know what they got themselves
into. No, exactly.
into.
And everyone kind of shines the light on Citadel, and there are a lot of companies that want to be Citadel. But again, you forget that they've been doing this for so many years and have been investing in
so much sunk cost.
Yeah, 100%. And that story you said about when Enron went down and Ken Griffin kind of flew in there, the team they took was a team of quants.
Yes.
They didn't take any of the traders.
Yes.
Roll it forward X amount of years. What's everyone looking for now? Quants. Because you need to understand the fundamentals of the market. But yeah, unless there's a story, reason, or identity, there's no point.
And then you still need an executioner.
Yeah.
And you still need a guy or 2 guys or 3 guys to say, okay, because it's like drawing a map. You guys drew us the most ideal map. There's barbarians on the left side.
Yeah.
There's the Mongols on the right side. There's the Martians here. There's the Venetians. It's because nobody will just, because what people don't understand, it's really the pathway of living through a position fundamentally and looking out, because it's very ungrateful in the sense that you're constantly looking for the bad.
Yeah.
And it's really, and when you are a great quant, and we certainly we hope we found some, and I'm sure we have. It's at the end of the day, it still needs to pass the test of time and test of market, and it can be the most wonderful presentation. It can be 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever. At the end of the day, it's an analysis, and then what do you do with it?
You still need to put.
And what capabilities do you have to actually monitor that analysis? Because it's one thing to do the analysis, but how good are your systems to breed the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns? Because something new will come in that will shake the shit out of this, and it's probably still right, but you will have all the chickens running around in nervousness and saying, oh my God, it will not work because A, B, C, D. And you know what? They might have a point. But then how to get that ship, to the other side? Yeah,
you still need apps. Yeah, and when I was saying analytics, that was more just an example, right? But trading as well, whatever you are in this market, if you're going to make a move somewhere, you need to feel comfortable and confident in that move, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's you're joining a business that's got a much lower latency than somewhere else, or much better or infrastructure or capital base or support network or kind of geographical span, there has to be something that entices you. Yeah. And it can't just be comp at the moment, I think is what I'm really trying to push, because I know comp does set culture, but it also can destroy
it shows the seriousness in a sense. It shows your commitment.
Yeah.
And that's all good, but it can also be the opposite and just be like, well, easy come, easy go, in a sense. The people that got it will just say, oh, I'll just try it. And if it doesn't work out, who cares? It's just a bunch of numbers somewhere on an account, and I got a bunch more anyways.
Yeah.
And
I think going back to when you were saying you needed the break, right? I think people now entering the space have got on a horizon, and it's, what do you want out from this? Do you want a career or a job that can give you the next 10, 15 years of your life? And if it does, you've got to bake into that your kind of your social and emotional state as well. So I want to join a business now that can offer me everything rather than just upfront cash, because I don't want that burnout that quick, because I've got other people to support, because the world post-COVID has fundamentally changed, right? Working from home has shown that the world can function in different capacities, not at full speed 5 days in the office.
No.
So there's now a version of candidates are probably slightly more in power than clients, which is a really hard dynamic to try and explain now because...
How can that be?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Only because of the demand that people want. Everyone's after the same, not everyone, majority of searches are now centering around very similar metrics. So it makes it tough, but fun. And it does separate the good from the bad. I cannot tell you how many new entrants we've seen come into our space over the past year.
Yeah.
Never heard of them before. And they're now touting themselves as commodity recruiters.
And I can only confirm that. And
Yeah,
but
there you go.
tourism on many fronts.
Yeah.
But look, here we are. You are to blame that we are here.
Hopefully it's a good blame. Hopefully
So
it's
far,
good-
it's a
yeah,
good blame.
good.
It was a very nice conversation.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
it's over an hour and a half already.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I hope Martin won't have too much to do in the after work. I'm not even sure how it's called, post-production work, I guess, Martin. But really, thank you for coming over. I know it's not a given, and really appreciate it. And you know, and I hope it was also interesting for the few people who will listen to us. But this is now part of the digital infrastructure of the internet. We're gonna release it, and for better or for worse.
I'm looking. Thank you for having me. I'm hoping I don't get any threatening letters or emails from people or clients or companies, but no,
I don't think
appreciate
so.
it really. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank
Always
you,
good.
Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching us. Hopefully, you found some interesting things, and those of you that got the inspiration to join our crazy little industry, please reach out to HC Group,
Thank you very much.
and then they'll bring you to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.